Australia is a big island with so many unique native animal species. However, very few people are aware that many wars are happening here to save over 1,700 of them on the brink of extinction. But the country never won. Even after 150 years of fighting against some of the most seemingly harmless animals like donkeys and rabbits with a variety of controversial weapons, even canning their meat. So how did the humble donkeys come to Australia in the first place? Donkeys were first brought to Australia in 1866 to help out. Back then, horses used for carrying supplies kept getting sick in the hot and dry outback. Donkeys, on the other hand, were tough with their much stronger digestive system, so they became the new helpers for people travelling through areas like Western Australia, Central Australia and the top end. In the late 1800s, keeping animals fenced in wasn't a common practice in outback Australia. The land was enormous, and there weren't many materials to build fences anyway. This meant animals sometimes escaped, or worse, were let loose when they weren't useful anymore, which happened a lot with donkeys. They can survive in many places, eat almost anything, and have a baby every year, unlike horses who only reproduce every other year. With all this freedom, the number of feral donkeys kept growing unmanaged for many years and became feral animals. By the early 1900s, cars and trucks took over donkeys' jobs. Soon after, in the 1920s, people started noticing groups of feral donkeys. And just 30 years later, their population was so large that Australia officially considered them a pest in Western Australia. Currently, we don't know for sure how many feral donkeys live in Australia. Some guesses say there are 5 million, but counting them all would be very hard and expensive. But here's the problem: if we don't control these donkey numbers, they'll keep growing by about 20% each year. That means in just 5 years, there could be more than 10 million feral donkeys in Australia, causing even more issues. But they can't do all the damage alone without teaming up with its distant relatives, who also aren't native to Australia. Together, they tear away soil and contaminate waterways, spread unwanted seeds, and ruin native plants and infrastructure. This was what this place looked like before they came, but now you can't see the bottom. These animals also damage livestock farms. They bring in new diseases that can cross species barriers and harm domesticated animals, such as equine influenza, African horse sickness, and tick fever. They like areas with pasture and bushes, which are the same places sheep and cattle farmers need for their animals. Once they've eaten everything in one spot, they can travel far, up to 31 miles without water, to find more food. This can quickly damage areas near water sources, which are especially important during droughts when many native animals and plants rely on them to survive. Without these safe havens, native plants and animals might disappear from those areas entirely. However, it's important to know that many donkeys and horses in Northern Territory are starving because there simply isn't enough food and water for everyone in that dry area. In some cases, putting these animals down might actually be a kindness to stop their suffering. Many people, including news reporters, mix up feral animals and invasive species. Here's the difference. Feral animals, though, are called wild, but they used to be pets or farm animals. Invasive species, on the other hand, are wild animals that didn't belong in a place originally, and they can cause problems. For instance, in Australia, some wild horses and donkeys actually came from farms. Now people are catching these animals and training them to help out on farms again, like protecting sheep and goats. In big open spaces, specially trained shooters can quickly cull them from helicopters, as with feral hogs, to minimize animal stress. Sometimes farmers also use tame horses, motorcycles, or even helicopters to chase them into a fenced area. These animals are also sometimes caught for commercial sale to foreign meat markets. Donkey hide collagen is in high demand in China, and donkey meat is a staple ingredient in some French and Italian salamis. But no matter how popular horses and donkey meat are in other countries, it is a big no from Australians for several reasons. Australia has a well-developed livestock industry producing beef, lamb and pork, which are more familiar and readily available to consumers. You know, these calm and friendly animals have been helping Australians for centuries, way before cars were invented. So to most Australian farmers, they are like good old friends, and it just feels wrong and cannibalistic to eat them. Establishing this exotic meat industry would be expensive and take a lot of work to get people interested in it. Shortly after the donkeys arrived, an Englishman named Thomas Austin decided to import 24 rabbits for a sporting Christmas hunt with his friends. Perhaps their skills weren't that good. Some rabbits got lost in the huge area around Thomas's farm in Barwon Park, where they don't have to worry about predators, food and water much. And unlike their European homeland, the mild winters in Australia were such an ideal paradise for them to breed all year round. Fast forward just 7 years and those 24 rabbits had exploded into millions. By the 1920s, less than 70 years after their introduction, there were an estimated 10 billion rabbits in Australia. These fluffy invaders dug massive networks of tunnels called warrens, wrecking the land. Their constant munching made them the prime suspect of rapid species loss here. They either ate everything in sight or competed with smaller creatures when food was scarce, pushing some to extinction. The government desperately tried to build giant fences, stretching over 2,100 miles, to stop the rabbit spread. People also started trapping and killing rabbits in large numbers. For some farmers, this became a way to earn money and pay off debts. But these methods couldn't keep up with the rabbits' incredible reproduction rate. The solution finally came in 1950 with a special virus called myxomatosis. This nasty virus was like rabbit smallpox, making them sick and eventually killing them. It worked wonders, wiping out over 90% of the rabbit population at the time. However, rabbits quickly developed resistance to this virus, so scientists had to come up with a new weapon, the rHDV virus. This one was even more brutal, causing rabbits to basically explode internally within days. Even today, new versions of this virus are used to control the rabbit population. Thankfully, it's brought the numbers down from billions to around 200 million. But despite the decrease, rabbits can still be found in 70% of Australia's landmass. Even though they're considered pests, rabbits actually became a source of food for Australians during tough times, like the depressions of the 1890s and 1930s, and even wartime. People fed them to dogs, and even started a rabbit meat industry. It was a bustling venture in Kingston for both domestic and foreign markets, processing at least 3,000 rabbits a day and making a significant contribution to the Australian economy. It continued into the 1960s because chicken was still a rare commodity on the dinner table, until the rabbit plague used to control rabbit numbers flipped it upside down. Now, after more than 60 years, Australians have many more meat options. And with the fear of the virus lingering, rabbit meat is no longer a popular choice. Additionally, many pro-animal organisations have also raised many questions regarding the humane side of things, making people think twice about eating any kind of meat. Hello my friends. Dawn arrives on the Australian agricultural landscape, and farmers start their day by observing foxes around the farm. There was no speed, brutality and bloodiness like the battles on the steppe, but here exists a war that will surprise you. Now we find out how Australian farmers are dealing with thousands of invasive foxes. In some rural areas in Australia, foxes are the main characters in farmer stories when it comes to destructive and dangerous animals. They are not only common predators, but also a serious threat to agriculture. Foxes are solitary animals, opportunistic hunters, and specialize in capturing live prey. They use pincer-like claws and are skilled at grabbing prey with precision, combined with sharp teeth ready to tear anything apart. Therefore, foxes have the ability to kill their prey very quickly. The space is peaceful and quiet with no signs of danger. But in just a few short minutes, foxes can invade the farm and attack your livestock. Farms near forests or wild areas are places where foxes often appear to attack. The chickens lay motionless on the ground with patchy bite marks. Something terrible happened last night. The farmers knew for sure that the person causing this chaos was none other than the fox, because they've been lurking here for a few nights. Foxes are not only a danger to pets, but also a challenge to social security. They invade residential areas and consider this as their territory. Instead of wandering through the forest, foxes now appear on the streets, even entering people's houses like this. It wouldn't be worth mentioning if they didn't attack people in the area. This was a brutal attack and everything was chaotic. This woman faced the fox's aggression. You can see she tried to get away from it, but it didn't seem to want to let go. Fortunately, she survived, but the physical and psychological consequences still follow her every day. It is a feeling of fear and pain. The use of traps to control fox populations is an important measure for Australian agriculture. Traps like this are not only highly effective, but also simple, easy to use, and especially can be reused many times to implement the strategy. There are many types of traps depending on the size and weight of the fox. First of all, farmers will carefully prepare tools, traps, ropes, and bait. The process of setting traps is simple but requires strategy and caution. Farmers need to choose appropriate trap locations to maximize the ability to catch foxes. Usually, it is on routes frequented by foxes. By setting traps 2 to 3 times per week, Australian farmers have achieved significant results in controlling fox populations. According to an Australian government study, fox numbers have decreased by about 30% in the past 5 years, mainly thanks to the implementation of trapping. Therefore, it can be said that up to now, traps are a smart solution, because it not only controls the number of foxes, but also effectively protects the agricultural environment. However, the process of destroying this invasive fox species also requires attention and compliance with certain principles during the trapping process. Farmers must check the trap regularly to ensure it is working properly and is not causing injury to humans or other animals. Besides trapping, hunting is also a popular method among Australian farmers, the opening shots in the battle to protect crops. For farmers, fox hunting is not only a recreational activity, but also an important means of controlling fox populations, especially in areas such as agricultural areas in New South Wales and Victoria, where foxes often destroy farms. There is no denying that foxes are part of the Australian ecosystem. But if left unchecked, a sudden increase in fox numbers could pose a major threat to the food chain because of reduced livestock numbers. At the same time, it will affect the food source for other predators. A sudden increase in fox populations can create great pressure on the local environment, affecting ecological balance and the biosphere. Large numbers of foxes can create challenges for wildlife management agencies, especially when it comes to implementing control measures to protect farmers and the environment. These harmful effects together create a major challenge for Australian farmers, requiring them to apply innovative and effective fox control measures. In the field behind the pile of hay, the farmer was waiting. The shot killed the fox quickly. This is the result after about an hour, compared to setting traps and having to wait passively. Many farmers prefer to choose to hunt, because they can actively follow the fox's tracks, even find their dens. And you see, this choice is reasonable, because this way farmers can process larger quantities quickly. You know, foxes are omnivores, they can eat all your livestock and crops. This diversity of food sources has posed a huge challenge to efforts to prevent fox overgrowth. They are capable of hunting a variety of prey, from mice, rabbits to birds. This also increases the difficulty of control. If given the opportunity, foxes will try their luck with adult sheep and even adult cows. In fact, a study in Wales also found that sheep are an important food source for foxes during the summer. Therefore, Australian sheep farmers are always looking for ways to eliminate foxes around their grazing areas. Especially during the sheep breeding period, farmers will organise hunting to protect their farms. The car was approaching the edge of the forest, where foxes often appeared. Hunters holding their hunting equipment in their hands. A dramatic night hunt begins. They walk toward the fence around the farm and fields. He is imitating fox cries to lure them to this area. After efforts to entice, a fox appeared. This method is really effective for night hunting trips. When hunting in forests and wild areas, hunters need to be able to move flexibly in diverse environments. They must be really healthy to carry guns everywhere where foxes often go. They had to stalk and hide for hours until they killed the fox. Only when night comes, the fox's eyesight decreases, so they don't have to hide. But you see, night hunting is not easy either. Their efforts yielded surprising results. This is how many foxes they killed in one night. With every step taken at night, Australian farmers are facing the risk of great economic and psychological loss. Fox attacks not only mean the loss of hundreds, even thousands of livestock for farmers, but they also carry with them concerns about personal safety and the stability of rural communities. But you can see, faced with a great challenge, farmers in Australia do not hesitate. They have created unique strategies to protect their fields. A farmer's long day begins with careful observation. A base used to hunt foxes was placed on top of the container. He was climbing up there and looking into the distance. Farmers do not want to miss any movement in the fields. They must recognize the first signs of the appearance of foxes. Before this invasive species disappears, this battle will continue every day.